Hey everyone, I am Robin the Copy Bitch. This is Stewie, my sidekick sloth. And today we are going to talk about how to break up with a client nicely. I sound awfully upbeat about a subject that might actually be scary or sad or a whole lot of other emotions, but here's the situation. If you are a freelancer, occasionally you're going to have some client relationships that go sour, that go south, things feel off. Doesn't mean you have to fire every single one of those people, but occasionally you will have to end a client relationship. So I want to give you some scripts so you can feel confident in doing it in a way that's professional and graceful, doesn't burn any bridges, and you can just do it. So let's get to it, shall we? So first, a couple of disclaimers. I'm not a lawyer, so if you have contractual obligations with this client, you're going to want to make sure you reread your contract, perhaps consult a lawyer. But barring any of that, let's say that you don't have anything stopping you from firing a client, we can go on with this video. But just keep in mind that I am not a lawyer. I am a freelance copywriter. I've been doing this for over 20 years. While most of my content is geared towards fellow copywriters, content writers, this video will apply to anyone who does any sort of freelancing because we're all working with clients. Occasionally we will have a troublemaker in the bunch or just something that's not working out, and you might need to let them go. The other thing to keep in mind, not all clients you walk away from doesn't have to be this big dramatic affair. Sometimes it's just not a good fit. I've been in business for 20 years, over 20 years. I've been in business since 2002, and I think I have walked away from, because I was thinking about this when I was doing this video, I can think of 4 clients where I've walked away from, and some were actual, a firing, like I can no longer work with you. But some were just like, this isn't the right fit. And having the conversation with them about I don't think I'm the best person, the best writer for your business, and here's why. And just being very transparent and honest. I will say that that situation, that one where I'm saying I'm not the best fit, has only recently happened in the last couple of years. And I think that shows the maturity I've had as a writer and just recognizing, hey, you know what, this isn't the best fit, and I think you'd be better served working with someone else. So it's not always this big dramatic firing when you walk away from a client. Sometimes things just don't work out. It's kind of like dating. If you are someone who can remember your dating years, sometimes a relationship just runs its course and something is just off, and maybe you try to address it, but ultimately you can't, so you have to end it. And again, you want to do so gracefully. That's the goal, because it's a small world and you never know if one marketing manager you worked with at one company might end up somewhere else, or someone might check in through your LinkedIn and reach out to someone that they haven't. You never know who's going to know someone and ask about you. And you just want to make sure that you are not burning any bridges and that you're doing things politely, professionally, gracefully. And I'm going to get off my soapbox now. Let's talk about signs that it's time to fire a client. And here's the thing. The biggest sign is your gut. My gut, your gut, all of our guts. Your gut's going to know when something's not working. Now, that doesn't mean we won't try to sweep it under the rug or rationalize with ourselves, because we're human and not cute little sloths, and that's what we do. But you're going to know when something's off. That doesn't mean you necessarily have to go and fire the client on the spot, but you're gonna know. I don't have to give you these signs, but I'm gonna give you a few signs anyway, just in case you're stuck in that oh, it's okay, it'll all work out in the end sort of place. Here are some things to look for. Do you hate getting emails from them? You cringe, you roll your eyes, you see their name pop up in your inbox and you're just gives you a stomach ache. That's a sign something's not working. Another sign, you hate doing the work. You will do it last on your list. You will scrub toilets before you do this client's work. That's a sign that something is not working. You find yourself complaining about this client a lot, maybe all the time. Occasionally you're going to complain about various clients, even the ones you love, but I'm talking about you just always are complaining about this client to whoever asks, or maybe your partner is just hearing you talk about this one client over and over and over and just how much they're making you just batty. That's a sign that something is off. Again, you know this. I don't have to point this out. You already know this. Here's another sign. If you are dealing with a client that's making you think of leaving freelancing altogether, that's a sign. I mean, if they're taking the joy out of the work, or if you're just you know what, I would be better off going into an office, working for someone than dealing with this, that's a sign that you're dealing with just a really problematic client situation. And maybe it is a symptom of something larger going on with your business, but if it's that one client that's making you feel that way. And that's not a good way to feel. That's a sign that something is off. So here are the things you have to ask yourself, because again, just because you're having some of those signs doesn't mean you have to necessarily fire that client. If you get to the point of the one I was just talking about where you're thinking of quitting freelancing, you might be past the point of no return. And that's the thing you have to think about. When you're managing client relationships, there will be hiccups along the way. There will be speed bumps. It's not all rainbows and puppy dogs. I wish it were all the time for the sake of you and me and the puppy dogs and rainbows, but there will be hiccups and speed bumps. And the thing you need to do is when you encounter one of those speed bumps, try to address things as they occur rather than letting them fester and fester and fester, getting to the point of no return. Because some things you can address and you can salvage your relationships and you can go on and have a very productive working relationship, but you need to address them. So here are some things to think about, going back to those signs and then thinking about where you are. What is bothering you about the relationship? So when you do see an email come in from the client, it's making you roll your eyes or cringe or you just don't want to open it. How did you get to that point? Is it because maybe the work has just changed so drastically and you're like, this is not what I signed up for? That's something you could possibly address. You could have a conversation with the client and say, hey, you know what? I just want to touch base because, what we originally discussed back in January has changed dramatically now that we're sitting here in June, and it's kind of not what I signed up for, and I want to see if we can maybe discuss ways to approach the projects differently, or I might need to redo my quotes or something like that. See if you can have that conversation, and that's probably a subject for a separate video. But again, that could be something you salvage. Speaking of money, money's often the thing that can make us feel not so great about the client relationship. Maybe the project you quoted has changed, or maybe you didn't quote accurately for that project because you're new to copywriting and you just are figuring things out. Again, that's something you can address. If you've been working well and happily with a client and they seem to be happy with your work, but you know that you should be charging more, you can have that conversation and you can be like, I'm upping my rates, or after doing this work for 6 months, I realized that there's more work involved, so I need to readjust my rates, and have that conversation. If they're pleased with your work and it's reasonable, they might be okay with it. So another reason you might be not having such a great time with the client is because the project has dramatically changed, because scope creep has crept in, and what they originally told you has changed into this big massive thing, and you are not getting paid accordingly. That's something you can absolutely address, and you can just say, for that very reason, be like, hey, this project has changed. I quoted on X, it's become this. I need to, we need to have a conversation about making me square, making me whole. So, and that's fair, and that does happen occasionally because projects do change as, you go about things, especially with websites. Things can get really much messier and bigger, and there's a lot more involved. So you can have that conversation. Now, let's say you're past the point of no return. Let's say you've done, you've thought about the signs and you've thought about the questions as to why you're feeling the way you are, and maybe you've talked to things with clients and you're just done. You just want out. So here are some things to think about when we get to that point. So is there ever a good time to fire a client? The answer is no. You're going to find this out. It's just like a relationship. You might be holding off for that wedding that's happening in a month and then thinking you'll do it after that, but there's always going to be another wedding, something else that comes up that makes you not do it. So it's like pulling off a Band-Aid. You just have to do it. You just have to make up your mind and do it, and know that, it might be a little uncomfortable, or you might feel like it's going to be uncomfortable. Once you get through it, usually the relief you feel is the evidence that you made the right decision. So a few things to think about. First of all, again, think about your contract. Again, I'm not a lawyer, but contractual obligations can have an impact or influence when you do things. I don't recommend ever firing a client midstream. So finish the project you're working on. Now, there could be extenuating circumstances if the client is being abusive, truly toxic relationship. There are always extenuating circumstances, but majority of the time, you probably can finish the project that you're working on and then call it a day. So think about that. A reason why a lot of freelancers won't fire a client is because they don't have a client to replace them, and it might be a significant source of revenue. This is one of the reasons why I recommend to freelancers to not have all your eggs in one basket. You want to diversify. You want to make sure that you have several streams of income, so if one client does go down, whether you have to fire them or something changes and they have to pause, you're not scrambling to pay the rent or to, feed the sloth. That's again, separate conversation, but keep that in mind. But let's say that you are in a situation where you're worried about the income that you're going to lose from that client. What you're going to need to do, and this means you're probably going to be working harder for a shorter period of time and still dealing with the difficult client, is you're going to need to work towards replacing that client. And the way you do that is, networking. Get out there to your chambers of commerce and to networking groups online like LinkedIn. Talk to current clients you have who are happy with your work, especially if you work with any marketing firms or web design firms. Let them know that an opening in your schedule has come up and that you can take on additional work. So a marketing firm might, have you join a new account, and that new account can replace the client that you're going to let go. You're probably going to want to make sure that new account that you're doing, you're happy with it and everything, and it feels like a good fit. And then if it does, you can let that other client go. Reach out to past clients. So a lot of times, you might work with someone who's really happy with your work at one company, but then they leave that company. That happens a lot. People change jobs and they go somewhere else. That's why you should always connect with your clients on LinkedIn, because then you can follow them. If they leave the business, you still have that connection. You can message them, be like, hey, how are you? I just want to let you know that I'm open to work. Just put it out there and get in the habit of doing that anyway, even if you're not open for work, just because they might not have work when you reach out to them anyway, but you're staying on their radar. So it's just always a good practice to get in that habit. So let's say you have found someone to replace that client, or you're not necessarily concerned about losing that income because you have a nice, diverse client portfolio at the moment. Now you just need the goods. What should you say to break up with this client nicely? Okay, so let's talk about some scripts that you can use, and I do believe in short, sweet, to the point. Be professional, be clear. You don't need to give a big, long explanation as to why you're doing it. Think about any time that you worked for a company where you gave a 2 weeks notice. You didn't probably give this big, long, drawn-out letter. You probably just had a short paragraph saying, thank you for the work. Thank you for the opportunity I've had for the last 5 years, but my last day is going to be on June 30th or whatever it is. And short, sweet, to the point. That's all you really have to do for the clients you're breaking up with. Now, I know you might feel like you have to give a little more context, especially if you've been working with the client for a while or you've developed a friendship. You can still be warm and short. You can. So I'm going to give you some examples. I'm actually just going to read from my screen, so you're going to see me do that right now. So here's option number 1. I'm making some changes in my business that are affecting my bandwidth. As a result, I'll no longer be available for projects with your company after this date. I appreciate the work we've done together, and I wish you and the rest of the team well. Sincerely, Robin and Stewie. Okay, you get the idea. Short, sweet, to the point. So I'm going to give you a script. I'm going to read it again. So, dear client name, I'm making some changes in my business that are affecting my bandwidth. As a result, I'll no longer be available for projects with your company after this date. I appreciate the work we've done together, and I wish you and the rest of the team well moving forward. Sincerely, your name. Short, sweet, to the point, friendly, not antagonistic. Okay, so that's option number 1. Option number 2. Oh, so here's another thing that you can put at the end of option number 1. You could actually say, and this only do it if it's true, you could say, I have a couple of colleagues who might be a good fit for your upcoming projects. If you'd like an introduction, just let me know. You wouldn't include that unless you've already talked to some colleagues who are actually interested. But if you do that. And then that's really a nice way to end things because you're not leaving the client in the lurch. Okay, option number 2. Dear client, I wanted to touch base about an update on my end. After giving it a lot of thought, I no longer feel I'm the best fit for the work you need. So this project will be my last. I do wish you and the team well moving forward. I'll send my final invoice at the end of the month. Again, you can customize this. This is just giving you an example of, hey, I don't think I'm the right, fit for your work anymore. Now, this is the sort of email that might invite the client to respond with, well, what do you mean? Let's have a conversation. And that's where you have to be prepared to have that conversation. I don't know if I mentioned at the beginning of this video, but I had a situation like that within the last couple of years where I just didn't feel I was the right writer for the work for very specific reasons. And not because of anything bad, just I did not have the information. I just didn't have the experience in this particular area, and I think that they could have found writers who did, and it would have served them better. And I was very honest about that. I was honest about that from the beginning. I decided to give it a try, and then I realized, I should not be doing this work. And I think they were so needy for a writer, they didn't necessarily want me to go, even though they knew I was right. And eventually they did move on, and it was best for everyone involved. There were no hard feelings, at least not on my part, and I don't think on theirs either. But sometimes that happens. So you might have to have that conversation if you send an email like this, but that's the way to at least broach the subject. Here's option number 3. Again, this is not, you're not doing any lying by using this. So, hi client, due to some personal and business challenges in my life, I won't be available for copywriting work after June 30th, whatever the date is. Thanks in advance for your understanding. Leaving it vague like that, if you don't want to use the word challenges, you could say changes. So due to some personal and business changes in my life. Again, not a lie, like the changes, you want to get rid of this client. So you could put something out there very soft like that and then move on. Now, if you want to get specific about the project you're working on, like outline after I finish doing these 3 blog posts, or, after I finish doing this batch of social media posts, you can be really specific so that they know what the final project is, and you can be clear about that, and, that's all well and good. Again, this happens all the time. It's business. That's what you have to remember. This is business. It's a business relationship. People do leave companies. People leave client freelance relationships. You're not the only writer out there, so they will find someone else, and that's okay. And they're not the only client out there. You will find someone else, and that's great. So that's what you have to keep in mind when you have to occasionally break up with a client. It shouldn't happen often. If you find yourself in a situation where you're breaking up with clients left and right, take a step back and ask yourself if you are courting the right clients, like what is it about these relationships that aren't working, or if there's something about what you're doing in the way you handle projects that's making things stressful, that's making things not work. Again, a separate subject for a separate video, but you shouldn't necessarily be firing clients left and right. I don't think. I mean, you do you again, but over 20 years, and I think 4 clients, I've had to let go, or I've had to walk away from, and not in dramatic style. There's only been one that I had to walk away from, not in dramatic style, but it was a bit toxic and a bit abusive, and I just ended it because it was a problem. And luckily I was working with a web designer who also recognized it was a problem, and he intervened and he stepped in, and then I didn't even have to deal with the client anymore. And it was the right decision. It was just, there was some odd stuff going on with that. I'll leave it at that. All right, everyone, I am Robin the Copy Bitch. This is Stewie, my sidekick sloth. Hopefully this video was helpful. As with all my videos, make sure you check out the description below, because I will include a link to the blog post about this topic, and you'll be able to see the scripts. You can copy, paste them, customize them, and use them if and when you ever have to break up with a client. And if you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Think of subscribing to the channel. I am Robin the Copy Bitch. This is Stewie, my sidekick sloth, and we will see you next time. Bye!